Good evening, and welcome to Educational Learning with your hosts, Jackson Coombs and myself, Joey Altmeyer. We have a very interesting and educational show for you tonight, and we hope that you very much enjoy it.
In tonight's program, we will cover the following topics: Chernobyl, Kristen, Bikini, both the island and the swimwear at intermission, Rajanlat, and finally, Ebe.
Let's jump right into it, shall we? We'll start off with Chernobyl. Some of you might have heard of the incident that occurred there, some of you might have no idea at all. But maybe, just maybe, we will help you enrich your knowledge and vocabulary on this incident. Chernobyl, which some of you may know, is Russian for the confused goat. Once a place known for its cabbage rolls and sausage, now known for one of the biggest technological accidents of mankind. The Chernobyl nuclear power station is a discontinued power plant near the city of Pripyat, Ukraine. Originally titled the V.I. Lenin Nuclear Power Station, the name was later changed to Chernobyl because of the city it is located in. Due to what is now known as the Chernobyl disaster, the plant has been shut down. However, healthy reactors continued to be used until about the year 2000 due to a Soviet high-power demand. The event that took place at Chernobyl on April 26, 1986, was both devastating and terrible. It happened on a rather warm morning for Ukraine, being about negative 34 degrees at precisely 1:23 in the a.m. What had been an unauthorized system test turned into a catastrophe when one of the reactors experienced a major power surge. An emergency shutdown was put into effect, but when an even larger power spike was emitted, it in turn led to explosions in the core, causing radioactive particles to spread into the atmosphere and surrounding areas. Large pieces of carbon were shot around the area that were from the exploded core. Meanwhile, radioactive particles were being carried by smoke across central Eurasia. What is interesting to note is that the Soviet government did not even announce anything happened until radioactive material had made its way to Sweden. Also noted, when firefighters were sent to put out the fires from the explosion, many of them did not even know there was any radioactivity at all. Many of the people sent in to aid and evacuate the situation were either made ill or died from radiation poisoning. Here are a few pictures of what the radiation has done to some of its victims. Absolutely terrifying, to say the least. This entire time, authorities were constantly attempting to conceal the truth of the explosion. By the time the government had come in to investigate the situation, 2 people had died and 52 more had been hospitalized. Once the government had realized the amount of radiation of the plant and the nearby city of Pripyat were covered in, they enforced an immediate evacuation. Inhabitants were told to only bring what was necessary, and that they would return in less than 3 days. They have still not been allowed to return. 50,000 people left everything they owned, and to this day their belongings are still there in Pripyat's exclusion zone. The city was evacuated in less than 2 days. Since this time, there has been no means of maintaining the city, leaving rooms flooded and ransacked. As of December of the year 2000, 350,400 people have been evacuated and resettled from the most severely contaminated areas of Belarus, Russia, and Ukraine. The city of Pripyat was established to provide housing for workers and their families. It was considered the 9th nuclear city, and unlike most cities of military importance, access to the city was not restricted to the public. The average age of the city was 26, and the town featured various gyms, shooting yards, and even a Ferris wheel, which is still standing and has become an icon for the city. It does remind me of when I was just a young lad and had to evacuate the McDonald's playground because another young lad had defecated himself in the ball pit. Such a tragedy. The historical town has been seen and used in many music videos, advertisements, and even video game levels, such as Call of Duty Modern Warfare. Both towns are subject to reopen in the year 2065. However, there are currently still some areas that are still too radioactive for human contact. We do hope you enjoyed this riveting adventure, and we hope you are ready for the next.
Well, that was just fascinating, wasn't it, Joey?
Indubitably.
Well, let's move on to our next topic. Kristen, the second largest nuclear disaster in the world was also located in Russia.
Russians don't seem to have their nuclear game down, do they? Let's go.
The Christian disaster was a radiation contamination incident that occurred on September 29, 1957, at Mayak, a nuclear fuel reprocessing plant in Russia. It measured as a level 6 disaster on the International Nuclear Event Scale, making it the second most serious nuclear accident ever recorded. This is, however, after the Chernobyl disaster. The event occurred in the town of Ozorsk, a closed city built around the Mayak plant. Since the Ozorsky Mayak was not on the maps, the disaster was named after Kristen, the nearest known town. After the Second World War, the Soviet Union lagged behind the United States in the development of nuclear weapons, so it started rapid research and development program to produce a significant amount of weapons-grade uranium and plutonium. The Mayak plant was built in a great hurry between 1946 and 1950. Gaps in knowledge of Soviet physicists about nuclear physics at the time made it difficult to judge the safety of many decisions. Also, environmental concerns were not taken seriously during the early development stage. Initially, Mayak was dumping high-level radioactive waste into a nearby river, which was taking waste into the Ob River, flowing farther down to the Arctic Ocean. Later on, Lake Karachay was used for an open-air storage. A storage facility for liquid nuclear waste was added around 1953. It consisted of steel tanks mounted on a concrete base stored underground. Because of the high level of radioactivity, the waste was heating itself through decay heat. For that reason, a cooler was built around each bank containing 20 tank facilities for monitoring operations of the coolers, and the contents of the tanks were not up to par. In September 1957, the cooling system in one of the tanks contained about 70 to 80 tons of radioactive waste failed, and the temperature in it started to rise, resulting in non-nuclear explosion of dried waste having the force estimated of about 70 to 100 tons of TNT, which threw the concrete lid weighing about 160 tons into the air. There was no immediate casualties as a result of the explosion, which released an estimated of 2 to 50 MCI of radioactivity. In the next 10 to 11 hours, the radioactive cloud moved towards the northeast, reaching 300 to 350 kilometers from the accident. The fallout of the cloud resulted in long-term contamination of an area of more than 800 square kilometers. Because of the secrecy surrounding Mayak, the population of the affected areas were not initially informed of the accident. A week later, on October 6th, the operation for evacuating 10,000 people from the affected area started, still without giving an explanation of the reason for the evacuation. People grew hysterical, with the fear of the incident of the unknown mysterious diseases breaking out. Victims were seen with skin searing off their faces, hands, and other exposed parts of their bodies. Even though the Soviet government suppressed information about the figures, it is estimated that the direct exposure of the radiation caused at least 200 cases of death from cancer. To reduce the spread of radioactive contamination after the accident, contaminated soil was evacuated and stockpiled in fenced enclosures that were called
graveyards of the Earth. The Soviet government in 1968 disguised the EURT area by calling it the East Rural Nature Reserve, which prohibited any unauthorized access to the affected land. This land housed the radioactive soil that was evacuated from the land. To this day, the level of radiation in Ozorsky itself is claimed to be safe for humans, but the area of the East Ural Nature Reserve is still heavily contaminated with radioactivity due to the large amount of soil that was moved to this area.
We do hope you enjoyed this riveting adventure, and we hope you are ready for the next.
Excellent presentation, Jackson. That was very well done.
Thank you very much.
Alright, well, moving forward, keeping things rolling, we're going to move on to our next section, which is, of course, on Bikini. Followed by which we will go into an intermission showing not just the island of Bikini, but the swimwear as well. Let's take a dive and go into Bikini.